Gideon, what will the world look like when Donald Trump inherits the world in January of 2017?
Bite your tongue. But I do think that, although, as you say, every president always says, I will look better in hindsight. I think that's actually going to be true of the Obama administration's foreign policy, because what we see over time is avoiding bad wars and dumb mistakes and keeping the economy relatively on track tends to make you look better against more profligate and more reckless administrations that can be more satisfying to be active in the short term. The administration leaves the country in a better off situation than it was when it came in. We were in the middle of wars. We were in the middle of a global financial crisis. And although there have been mistakes along the way, overall, the United States, I think, is in better shape, although it doesn't feel that way. I think in the broad spectrum, our foreign policy is in a more robust situation now than it was 7 years ago.
You said something interesting in the essay that opened the issue, which is that Barack Obama has a conservative, small c, conservative temperament. Is that something that's possible with a president of either party?
I think so, in the sense that this is a guy who obviously has liberal goals, who obviously wants to change things, but is very cautious about how he goes about implementing them. So, for example, he might want to have a sort of revolutionary foreign policy in terms of his ideals, but he hasn't actually been revolutionary. He's been very cautious about getting involved in things. He's been very cautious about intervention, and he's been willing to actually be patient and create situations that let time work on our side. The Iran deal is a perfect example. Stabilize one particular aspect of the situation, the nuclear agreement, and create conditions in which the situation can get better over time. That's not a bad policy in the long run, I think.
Yergin, Brett Stevens of the Wall Street Journal had the rejoinder to this essay defending Barack Obama's foreign policy, in which he basically said Barack Obama has been terrible at dealing with our allies, at actually reassuring them. And my thought looking at that, particularly the Gulf states, is do we need these guys as allies? Are they particularly helping us right now?
Well, I think they still play a very important role and will continue to play a very important role in the world economy. And you'll say, what's the alternative to them? And you look at Iraq or you look at Syria, you say that's not a very good alternative. So I think there is that question about the relationship. Who are the strong allies of the United States at this point of time? Gideon makes, about the caution, but and we have two big problems, which is, is the relations with Russia are getting worse. Russia is a very important player. And, of course, the whole question of the vacuum that now exists in the Middle East.
Well, let's rip up the script here to the latest news. David Wu in our previous hour mentioned this off camera. The idea of Russia assisting Assad in Syria. I mean, Gideon, this is 48 hours old, basically.
It is, but, look, I think this can be overplayed. The United States is clearly...
Yeah, we said that about Ukraine, though. I'll call you on that.
Okay, and let's talk about Ukraine. The United States did not have a security guarantee for Ukraine. Russia has been penalized and isolated and sanctioned for its involvement there. And in the long run, Russia is going to be constrained more than NATO and the West. Syria is not a prize to be won. It's a morass to be stayed out of.
But it's also very interesting to see who's showing up now in Russia to buy arms. Jordan, Saudi Arabia, big business deals. Things are changing. And I think partly what Putin is doing by going into Syria is saying, you're going to have to deal with Assad because we're going to be there. You can't just say, no Assad. We're going to be part of making this deal.
Can the United States of America deal with Mr. Assad?
Well, I think that, he's there in some fashion, and this crisis is getting, worse, and it's a crisis now for Europe. So there has to be a way to find some kind of stabilizing it. And who's the victor in all of this is ISIS.
Who are the parties that have to come to an agreement, the foreign parties that have to come to an agreement in Syria? Turkey, Russia, the U.S.?
The Gulf countries.
Gulf countries?
Gulf countries, yeah.